Okay, today we got another reaction video. And before I even start, I want to say thank you again to all the people sending me material. It is very much appreciated. And so with that being said, we're going to get into a 40-second clip, 45 seconds or so, dealing with the topic of racism. I'm not going to talk specifically about the clip until you see it, and then we'll kind of give commentary after we're done. But so yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's get into that video, and then we can critique it and talk about it. Let's go.
A Douglas County woman accused of infecting fear into the hearts of her neighbors is expected to turn herself in this week. Investigators say Teresa Lucas wrote and placed threatening notes into multiple mailboxes. The letters claim to be from a white male member of the Ku Klux Klan. Police found evidence that linked Lucas to what was going on, and she's now facing 8 months of making terroristic threats. It counts.
It counts. All right, so that's a short video, and before I even get into any kind of commentary with regard to that topic, let me just say at the outset that I do believe the obvious, which is to say racism certainly exists today. To what degree does it exist? That's a different topic. There are those who would believe that racism today in 2021 is akin to racism in 1961 or 1951, so on and so forth. I don't. Typically, people who believe that are from like a leftist worldview or that kind of mindset. But I just find it interesting that while saying that and while believing that that racism is still the same as in times past, you see things like this, things like Jussie Smollett and this new lady. And how many times does this happen without being caught on camera or being caught? I feel like this is just a product of the times we're in, where people who have a victim mentality, who like playing the victim so they could be seen as the overcoming hero. They do this kind of stuff, not only to lie and to bring about attention to themselves, but again, I think specifically and ultimately to make themselves the hero in the case. So for example, you have this lady, the black lady, who's obviously lying, creating this narrative that the place in which she lives is a racist place, yet all the while she's the one writing these letters, pretending to be a Ku Klux Klan member. And I just found it interesting too, that the people in our time have no idea what real racism is, the racism that our fathers and grandfathers especially dealt with. The people today have no idea of what racism is. So the racism she could concoct in her mind is that a Ku Klux Klan member might act like this. And so she goes about writing these ambiguous letters or seemingly ambiguous letters, disguising herself as this nefarious bad guy, this Ku Klux Klan member, right? Not knowing that historically, when systematic oppression was at its zenith, was at its greatest height, you know, there was no need to be shrouded in mystery. Somebody could literally come to your neighborhood, burn a flag, burn a cross, or do some kind of sick and twisted thing to prove their dominance, right? So, but just today, the way in which people imagine racism or racist people to be is so comical and such a caricature of what it used to be that it's insane. It's funny to me. So I say all that to say this: there's this victim mentality again pervading throughout our society, which people use, I feel, and you guys can give me feedback, I feel they use it to as a means by which they can show themselves to be the hero in their own story, right? We live in a social media age where people can literally tailor-make their lives to look how they want it to look and to communicate to you, the viewer, what their life is like. And 99% of the time it's not that way, right? And so likewise, in these funny concocted stories like the one we just watched, you have a person who is creating this story, this narrative that racism is so bad. And the irony about it of it all is that it's just what the conservatives say. It's not as bad, nowhere as bad as what our forefathers dealt with, what our grandfathers dealt with. And so she proves that by showing that in the fact that she has to create these lies and narratives to prove her point, which doesn't even exist, right? She's a contradictory unto herself. So I don't want to make these too long, but I just want to leave you with this message that there are two things I feel that's prevailing or pervading throughout society, specifically with the victimized mindset. Those who believe that life has thrown them a curveball and they are, the marginalized and people who are taken advantage of, et cetera, et cetera. You typically find this within the people who are for Black Lives Matter, the organization over and against the actual implicit truth in that statement. You find that within the gay community, any kind of homogenized, marginalized group where they feel like they're the victim, yet interestingly enough, they prove to not be as victimized as they claim with the very things they say and the very way they live. The two doesn't correlate. And so I just find it incredibly funny. I can't help laugh that the people who are communicating this message that we live in such a marginalized society and they're such they're such, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess downtrodden type people. They're giving that message, yet notwithstanding living contradictory to it, existing contradictory to it by the things that they say and do. Because if they really were, then we would see it. We would see, for example, like in the 60s, not so long ago, our grandparents' age, right? If a black man were to speak in such a way that we speak today, they could literally be lynched for it. And many times, sadly, there wasn't any justice. People kind of overlooked it because real injustices occurred at that time. But comparing that time with this time, if you kind of superimpose the two, you see that it's insane to believe that racism exists in the same way or with the same intensity that it did in the past. I said a lot. I didn't want to speak too much, but you guys give me your opinion give me your opinion on the video. I'm getting, this is, I think, my fourth video. Still a lot of kinks to work out. I'm still getting used to the whole idea of speaking in front of a camera, but I'm getting there, and I'm kind of liking this whole thing. It gives me like, to me, it's like boxing or playing basketball. I feel like it's a stress reliever. So I appreciate all the comments and all of that. So I'll catch you on the next one. Peace. P.S. So I felt it necessary to come back on here to make a postscript statement. Not only do I stand by what I said in my last video, that is to say, I do feel like the people with a victim mindset or a victim mentality use the narrative that we live in a systematic oppressive state as a way in which they can portray themselves as the hero in their own story that they make up. Not only is that true, and I stand by it, but I also think too we do a disservice to our ancestors and forefathers who went through real adversity and real oppression, who didn't have the voice that we had, yet stood up literally facing death for truth and justice. And we're not the same. So I just wanted to come back on here and say that I do understand too that it's not always black and white. There are some people today who truly see that, who really believe that they live in a systematic state, a systematic oppressive state, or systemic racist state, and all that. And we'll have more conversations with regard to that, and we'll use specific instances and all of that. But for now, I just want to say again, as a kind of a PS, that one, people use this victim mindset as a narrative or a way in which they could make themselves look like the hero. For example, they create these invisible monsters, these monsters that don't exist, right? They're really terrifying. And then while they create it, they portray themselves as the overcoming victor who kills the monster. So again, they look like the hero, but the monster is not real, so they're not heroes. That's one. Two, we do our ancestors a terrible disservice when we make our plights today the so-called microaggressions that everybody faces. Doesn't matter what race you are, or I should say ethnicity, or whatever your social standing is, that we all face in some way or form. That is nothing to be compared with what our forefathers went through, and we do a terrible disservice to them when we claim that the racism that we feel is akin or the same as what they felt. It's nonsense. And thirdly, I understand too that there are some innocent people in the midst of this all, just ignorant in regards to the facts. And so don't hear me as just coming down hard on people who disagree with me. I hope that in the future we could dialogue. But yeah, I just felt it necessary to come back on here and make this postscript. So I hope you hear me in the motives that I give it, which is mostly love and some jovialness in there, but still, I mean nothing but just love. Peace.